deal
fires.
with the elements.
Yes, and if you see your pipes are starting to freeze, we see some icicles on the area that they're now investigating, that they had to try to douse that fire. And so there's still a lot going on, and these investigators are dealing with so much, and we thank them.
Well, and that's a big part of the ongoing story as well. How soon will it be before natural gas lines are turned back on in the area? Has water and sewer service been disrupted? How soon will it take to get those services back going again so that these businesses that are affected can indeed reopen? That'll be a determination made by the investigators once they clear the scene, and then all those safety issues will have to be checked and rechecked to make sure that the reverberation from that massive explosion didn't crack pipes that caused leaks that could cause more explosions later. So a lot of detail work has to take place before people will be able to get back inside these buildings. Some of these folks won't be able to get back inside their homes for a while. A lot of this is going to take days. It's going to take some time.
So let's talk about those people, because some of them may not have service if they're using AT&T. So if you know someone that is displaced, let's give you some help to pass along to them. East Park Community Center, which is 700 Woodland Street, they are taking people. Red Cross is standing by there. They have some food and a warm place for you to be. Also, ML Rose at one point was distributing food for people that are in the area that are displaced. That was a couple hours ago, though. I don't know if that's still underway, but if you are there, there are resources. I'm waiting to hear from the mayor as well. He was supposed to be speaking to us around 5 o'clock. We were told that that may be delayed as he was trying to get back to the scene, but he did say at one point, indicated that there'd be emergency homeless shelters put in place. Davis has been telling us about how cold it's been through the area, so we want to make sure that they get somewhere to stay as well. But when we get more information about where that staging area will be, we'll certainly pass that along to you.
A little bit after 5, I want to reset one more time as we wait for the mayor to hold a news conference. We will hear from Police Chief John Drake. We will hear from Metro fire officials. This all began this morning, 5:30 this morning. Shots were fired. Metro Police were called to the scene. At least 4 different rounds of several volleys of shots were heard. Sounded like high caliber ammunition being fired. At 6 o'clock, a suspicious RV was spotted. It was spotted at 166 2nd Avenue North next to the AT&T building. At 6:15, while police were investigating the shots fired and checking out this RV, suddenly an audio countdown, a message was broadcast in the area believed to be coming from the RV, that there was a bomb in the area, there was going to be an explosion, and for folks to evacuate. At that same time, Metro Police moved forward. They started to clear buildings. They put their lives at risk as they tried to work as best they could to clear the scene, to protect people who lived there, people who may still be in the area arriving for work. And at 6:30, just 15 minutes later, that massive explosion happened, and you saw the impact, the damage, fires, burning for several hours before fire officials could get everything put out. The massive crater destroying that building, causing a big hole into what was a bomb-proof building. So it gives you an idea of the extent of the size and the strength of this explosion that took place at 6:30 this morning.
And Matthew Foster, who is a special agent in charge of the FBI here in Nashville, says, "We will bring every resource to bear to find out what happened and bring those involved to justice. We need your leads and we need your help." At the time, he said tech experts were on the way to the scene. They have clearly arrived by now. They're going to process the, quote, massive crime scene, and we will find out what happens. But they said they need your help. 1-800-CALL-FBI, or they've set up a digital tip line. That's www.gov/Nashville. So if you've seen anything, or if there's something that sticks out to you, maybe a couple days ago even, definitely give them a call. That RV is the link to what's going on here. We've been showing you that. Also noting that maybe it looks as though there's no one in the passenger seat from here, what we can see as we've been trying to zoom it in. And I mentioned this earlier. I'll just say it again if you're joining us. My husband served in the military overseas and had to detect bombs in cars. And he said something that stood out to him was the wheel wells here, that the front wheel well has a lot of space between the wheel and, again, the iron part of the car. You can tell in the back one, it's heavily weighted down. That space isn't there. And that's a true indicator of how much bombage would have been in this RV.
The weight.
Sheer, yep. Yes, exactly. You can feel it.
Pure weight.
You see it.
And one of our smart viewers out there, they know so much more than we do. They're telling us to, if the investigators will tell us to ask them, was this an ampho bomb, which was ammonium bomb? Was it a fertilizer bomb, effectively, or was this dynamite? Those are the questions that they're going to be asking to determine what the substance was that caused the blast there. It's a little bit after 5. We know we told you that the mayor's going to have a news conference at 5 o'clock. We also told you that was going to be delayed a little bit as he tries to actually get himself back to the location where the microphones are. But he may be able to give us an idea about the next couple of days, what he wants Nashvillians to do, what's going to be happening to the business owners on Broadway, on 2nd Avenue. Will they be allowed to reopen? Will they be allowed to get back into some of these damaged buildings? Metro Fire is going to be there. They will also be able to tell us about the safety of the area. Are the gas lines all secured? Is the water lines all secured? Who's going to be doing an assessment to see the structural integrity of these buildings? When will that take place? A lot of unanswered questions that these folks are going to have to deal with over the next 24, 48, 72 hours.
Absolutely. And already you talk about those small businesses that have been so gravely affected this year, but they are banding together as they always do in the spirit of Nashville Strong. NCVC has started #NashvilleStrong, a reward fund for any information. When we first talked to Butch Spiridon, he said that they initially donated $10,000 to kickstart that fund. It grew to $20,000, then $25,000. We now know it's up to $35,000. Those that have been so greatly impacted are giving of their money to make sure that we can incentivize people to know what to know exactly what they have going on here, to get all of the information together.
Well, I understand the mayor has arrived on the scene, still being briefed, still being given last-minute information about what he wants to say to the citizens of Nashville, as well as meeting with fire officials and first responders as well. As soon as the mayor pops up on camera, we will let him speak for himself. He's already implemented a curfew in the blast zone that began at 4:30. Is going to be in effect the next few days. He'll probably talk more about that. It's a safety issue. They're not worried about people doing anything bad. They just want to make sure everyone is safe and that the investigators and those first responders on the scene have access to everything they need in the bomb zone so they don't miss any clues, so evidence is not disrupted unintentionally by someone who lives in the area. So they're just trying to do this as a precaution. It is not the entire city. It's just an area from, I think, the riverfront to 4th and Broadway up to the Metro Courthouse. So it's a pretty big area, but it's an area in the blast zone itself. As you continue to look at these just truly remarkable images of what took place this morning in downtown Nashville. And as we've said over and over, but it truly is worth saying again, it's truly a miracle that no one died in this terrible event and only 3 people suffered injuries. Not that anybody suffering injuries is wanted, obviously, but it's remarkable that these first responders and police officers who were on the scene, that more were not hurt when that bomb exploded.
And it is important to note, too, that the AP has reported that that authorities found human remains by the blast. So at this point, we're not sure if that was an innocent bystander or if that was someone that was actually in the RV. So we're working to get more information on that. We're hoping that maybe we'll have some clarity, but that's important to note as well. Bob mentioned the curfew that is in place that went into effect at 4:30. It will remain in effect until Sunday the 27th at 4:30. As far as the parameters, if you're down in that area, it is James Robertson Parkway, 4th Avenue North, Broadway, and the Cumberland River. So that's that box right there for you.
I think the biggest question everybody wants answered, that's probably going to take the longest to answer, is why? What's the motive behind this? This isn't a random act, I don't think, but we don't know. Was the AT&T building targeted? Certainly looks like it. Right. Was the gunfire that we heard earlier involved? Sounds like it may have been. Say again, I'm sorry.
The mayor is actually ready to do a press conference, so let's go ahead and hear what he has to say. Okay, couple seconds away. He's prepping, so we know that he has arrived on scene. They've all been busy trying to communicate, but you can see video from earlier here. Okay, go ahead.
To help us get critical news and information out. At this time, I'm going to introduce Mayor John Cooper, who has a brief update for everyone. He's also here with Chief Drake and Swan from Police and Fire, who can also take your questions. So at this time, I'm going to call on Nashville's Mayor John Cooper.
Well, thank you all for being here. The chiefs and I just have had a walking tour of the devastation on 2nd Avenue. And as of right now, initial evidence does show that the early morning explosion was a deliberate bomb being set off in our community. And the blast caused injuries and catastrophic damage to this very historic part of Nashville. Now, at the end of the day, I think all of us, I certainly have gone from relief that there were not more casualties, and that's an amazing thing that there were not, particularly when people begin to see the devastation on 2nd Avenue, to relief that there were not more casualties, to now anger and determination and resolve, and a resolve to rebuild and not to be deterred, and to bring whoever was responsible for this to justice. Now, I've spoken with Governor Lee, who is working with us to have a declaration of a civil emergency, both with the state and then for TEMA to work with FEMA to bring all possible resources to commit to rebuilding 2nd Avenue, to go forward, not being deterred by this. And I'm grateful to our state and our federal partners to help this important part of Nashville rebuild and come back. There are 41 at least separate businesses that are materially damaged by this blast. There will be others as we see the full extent of this, but already you can tell that it's going to need special help, special resources, and I'm grateful to the state partnering with us to commit to rebuilding 2nd. Now, and I want to stand with our downtown residents and our business owners for whom this was a terrible day, but we are, like Nashville has faced other challenges, particularly this year. We can rebuild and get back to normal. Now, as announced earlier, Metro is also establishing a curfew in the explosion impact area from 4:30 today until 4:30 p.m. this Sunday. Now, affected businesses, I would urge them to contact Krista Lapp at the Central Precinct, 862-8600, to be able to manage coming back to your facilities safely. But in the meantime, the curfew area is going to provide safety and security for businesses in this area. And I will go ahead and warn Nashville, it'll be some time before 2nd Avenue is back to normal. It is not going to be the 3 days of the curfew for 2nd Avenue itself. The curfew is going to go from 4th to the river, from James Robertson down to Broadway. The police are going to take special care with that for the next few days, and our partners at the FBI do have a large crime scene to investigate, and they need to be able to do that work effectively and well. Now, this morning's attack on our community was intended to create chaos and fear in this season of peace and hope. But Nashvillians have proven time and time again that the spirit of our city cannot be broken. But we're not going to rest until those responsible for this outrageous and cowardly attack are brought to justice. And the full force of the Metro Police and our partners with the FBI and the ATF are working together to make sure that we will get back to being the safe city that we are. Now, 3 people have been hospitalized as a result of the explosion, are in a stable condition, and my prayers are with them and their loved ones. Tonight, I was able to visit with a 4-year-old girl this morning who had no injury and was saved. But let's just spend a moment in celebration of the 6 uniformed Metro Police officers from our Central Precinct who were at the scene at the time of the blast. These incredible heroes who ran to danger with uncertain outcomes ahead of them were responsible for so many injuries being saved. Now, I've spoken with Chief Drake, and I can report that the officers who were injured by this are recovering well. I would like Chief Drake to come and spend a little bit of valuing Officers Hosey, Llewellyn, Wells, Seapost, Topping, and Sergeant Miller, who took swift action and directed people away from danger to save lives, even at the time that their own lives would have been in peril. They are heroes, and I am grateful to them and all of Nashville's first responders. This is a year where we understand what first responders mean to our community time and time again, and unfortunately on Christmas Day you have another example of that. Now, several downtown residents whose homes were destroyed by the blast, and I am inspired by their resilience. And we have to draw inspiration from them as our city to be resilient once again and to get the resources to rebuild. And I'm grateful to the Red Cross, who's opened an aid shelter at the East Park Community Center for those who have been displaced. Now, with that, let me turn this over to the chief and answer questions. I think the message of today is we are going from relief now to resolve, to catch those folks and to rebuild our city. And one more challenge in Nashville's 2020, but we will get through it, and we're grateful to our first responders. And never, you see all, once again, these officers running into danger to help save lives and injury. It's inspiring. And again, the gratitude of our community goes to the chief's force. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Drake to comment a little bit more specifically about the heroism, the great heroism of our department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper. As Mayor Cooper stated, these officers' acts of heroism is just tremendous. This morning, they received calls for shots fired. I had no idea what they were responding to. Once they arrived in the area, they heard an RV giving out a message, basically saying that it was going to detonate within a certain time frame, and a countdown would go on, and then it would play music, and then the countdown would start again. The officers immediately began knocking on doors and evacuating residents here, not knowing if the bomb was going to detonate immediately or if it was going to go off in the time that it was stated. These officers didn't care about themselves. They didn't think about that. They cared about the citizens of Nashville. And they went in, and we'd be talking not about the debris that we have here, but also maybe potential people. So with that said, the officers saved lives today, and their heroism is to be noted.
Sir, do you believe that either the Lyft headquarters or the AT&T data center might have been targets of this explosion?
We don't know. The investigation is continuing. We don't know the motive at this time, but we're following up on all available leads.
Is there any timing, Chief, at all, why this happened Christmas morning? Anything that leads you to believe that this day was chosen in particular for this to happen?
We don't have anything at this time. We're following up on every lead that we can. Why Christmas morning? We have no idea. It was a total surprise. In fact, when I was briefed this morning, I thought maybe it was going to be a propane explosion from an RV, and it turned out to be an intentional act. But we're going to follow up on every lead. We're following up on tips that come in now, and so we'll continue our investigative efforts.
Have you found human remains in the debris?
We have found tissue that we believe could be remains, and we'll just have that examined, and then we'll be able to let you know from that point.
Can you speak to where those were found?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go.
Yes, can you speak to where that was found?
I can't hear you.
Can you speak to where that was found, if it's believed that it might be someone who's inside the RV?
Well, the RV was detonated, so if it was someone inside, we have no idea. It was such a large explosion, but the investigation's continuing. There's matter all over the area down there, and so we'll continue to examine that to see if it is human remains. So.
Right now, are you saying that there are no fatalities when it comes to this incident?
Right now, it's no known fatalities that we know of. So.
Just the tissues is what you believe, that you found human tissue in the remains is what you believe?
We believe.
Believe.
Could be, but to be for certain, we have to examine it. And once we know for sure, and then we'll let everyone know. But we're investigating it.
Have you received any information of threats leading up to the city in the coming days? Anything to lead you to believe that this was something that was coming?
We have not received any threats whatsoever. It was total surprise. As I said, when I got the call this morning, I thought it was going to be a camper. Someone was trying to keep warm. It was a gas leak, and it was an explosion. As I got more updates, that's when I found out it was intentional. So we had no pre-warnings at all.
What do you make of the timing of this, being that there are no people out on the street at 6 in the morning, and that it happened with the announcement playing in advance?
Yeah, I don't want to speculate, but you would think that this person didn't want to harm people, that maybe just wanted to destroy, but we're not sure until we get further into the investigation.
Chief, can you talk about the 911 impact by this? Obviously, several cities have had their 911 systems knocked out because of this. Do you think that was the relation here? Was the intention to knock out 911 services?
We're not sure right now. We're following up on that. We're aware we did have some services go down. We did have AT&T go down for just a little while, but that's back up now. So to say anything more would be speculation.
I'm actually going to ask for that to be a last question for Chief. For just now, we're going to ask Chief Swan from Metro Fire to come and give an update.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I know there's a lot of unanswered questions that we can't answer right now, but some of the things we do want to talk about when we talk about our public safety and fire and police and Office of Emergency Management, the things that we do operate off of the LIP method, where we life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation. And so currently right now we know we've done a sweep of all the buildings to try to make sure that we cleared, that there is no personnel that are in the buildings, and we've done all the hazmat sweeps and all the things that you would imagine if it's a dirty bomb or something of this nature. Now we have our urban search and rescue teams in, that way that we can shore up the buildings. We got our structural engineers there to make sure that, again, that the buildings are sound enough to actually be able to enter in and out of them. So again, it's a lot of moving parts, and I know there's a lot of questions that, again, that we're trying to answer, but at this point, it's just so many moving parts. So again, we just want to take our hats off to all the first responders and all the job that has been done in the city, and especially right now with the infrastructure in the situation it is, all the partners that we have in local, federal, working together to make sure that, as the mayor said, we're a resilient city and we'll keep moving. Thank you.
Any idea how many people were evacuated?
That's a great question, and we're working on that because the way units are designed, and we're trying to get an accurate head count. What I can tell everyone, the Red Cross is partnered with us, and we have MTA or WeGo buses set up throughout the city. So if there's anybody that's displaced, we'll take them to the East Park Community Center, and from there, we'll make sure that they have a place to stay for tonight or for as long as needed.
Fair to say hundreds? Would you say hundreds? Like a ballpark?
I will say many people that may be displaced. I'm sorry, I don't want to put a number to it, but we know that there are people that are displaced.
Chief, can you speak to the structural integrity of the buildings downtown? Given the explosion, is that part of the reason why there's a curfew for the next few days to make in case anything collapses?
Absolutely. So at the Office of Emergency Management, when we try to look at the overall view of the city and making sure that everything is safe and working together, we know we had one building collapse due to the explosion and due to the age of the other buildings, and then we had water was being actually displayed throughout the buildings, and with the cold weather, we thank the water department as well, making sure that they've got the water shut off, but still the integrity of those buildings are in question, so we're trying to make sure that we do have everybody in place and safety for all personnel.
Chief, can you just real quick what building that was? What building was that collapsed?
I don't have that address. I'm sorry.
Do you know if a business was inside, residential, anything?
Yeah, it was a building that actually housed across from the explosion, which above it was residential above. So I can't really give you that. I'm sorry.
All right, guys,
yeah,
that's
going
to be our last question for this evening. I want to thank you guys for coming out. We will be in touch with you with regular updates. Again, thank you to Mayor Cooper, to Chief Swan, and Chief Drake for being here, and especially to those officers that we are so grateful for this evening. You'll hear from us again. All right, thank you.
Latest update from Nashville's mayor, police chief, and fire chief. And the bottom line, Nashville is thankful no one died and mad.
Yeah.
Angry is what the mayor said. Angry, resolute to resolve this situation, and determined to find the people who caused this damage, who performed this crime, to put them behind bars. And also, he did announce that 41 different buildings
Yes.
at least
At
suffered
least.
damage, at least, and
He
one
called-
collapsed. And so there's going to be an awful lot of, as we heard the chief of fire talking about, investigating to make sure of structural integrity to see if these buildings should continue to stand, can continue to stand.
What was interesting, too, from our perspective, we could tell that there was damage, but we couldn't tell the severity. So to hear the mayor say, quote, catastrophic damage to the historic area really does put it into perspective. Yes, 41 buildings damaged, he says, materially and potentially more. I also found it interesting, too, that they are asking for TEMA to assist FEMA to rebuild Second Avenue. He used the word rebuild, which indicates clearly that there's a lot that needs to be done on Second Avenue here. So Governor Bill Lee is working to do a civil emergency order to try to help get us funding and the resources that we need for that area.
A lot of positives coming out of this negative, but it sounds like the teams and the minds are together on what they want to do moving forward. But as you heard everybody talk about, it's going to be a while. It's going to be a while before they determine the structural integrity of these buildings. They're still being damaged effectively with frozen water that leaked out. You know, these buildings are old and they swell and they rescind again during these cold temperatures. So this isn't over with. There's still activity taking place as we speak to these structures that could damage them even more. And they want to make sure the area is safe. They want to make sure that anybody who lives there is cared for tonight and has a place to live. And as we heard them talk about, it's a substantial number of people. Now, maybe they have friends and family, and that's not a problem. But if it is a problem, the city is prepared for it.
Absolutely. And they're saying that the urban search and rescue team is still in the area checking for structural confirmed soundness, he said. That's from Chief Swan there. So he was saying that some of the buildings that are impacted, they haven't been able to confirm yet that it's sound for investigators even to go into, which means that this is going to be more than just a day or two worth of investigations.
And again, the miracle that came out of this day, only 3 people injured. They are all in stable condition right now. 6 Metro Police officers were in the vicinity on the scene when the blast occurred, and they all survived. It's truly amazing.
And a new piece of information, we looked at each other when Chief Drake said this, that when they arrived, that RV had that countdown to a bomb explosion. It would pause and play music and then go back to counting down. Just imagine your psyche of knowing what is going on. You're trying to get people out of that area. That's just an unbelievable, that's certainly premeditated, which we know this was. It's intentional, but that takes it to a different level as well.
And you could see the pride on the mayor's face and the police chief and the fire chief's faces as they talked about these first responders paying no attention to the danger and moving forward and doing their job and saving countless lives. And thankfully, they were not hurt themselves. But that is unbelievable that 6 Metro officers and first responders were in the vicinity of that massive explosion and somehow survived it.
The one thing we still want more answers about is that gunfire that was reported. They did not address that. We've heard some reports that maybe it was playing through the loudspeaker as well. Now that we know that music was playing as well, that could be a possibility. But Josh Breslow is standing by. We have some information. Something else has been tweeted out for us. Josh.
That's right. So our senator and senator-elect here in Tennessee just releasing statements around the same time here. Marsha Blackburn saying a big thank you here to Metro Police for all that they've done, for their life-saving actions this morning. The officers are true professionals, she says, that put their lives on the line to save innocent civilians. Hashtag Thin Blue Line. Also, Bill Haggerty tweeting out here around the same time as Marsha Blackburn saying, thank you to our brave police officers and first responders for continuing to keep our Nashville community safe. We are grateful for your service and dedication. So our senator and senator-elect just tweeting out those messages to kind of sing the praises of Metro Police, who were true heroes this morning as all this was going on, kind of echoing what Chief Drake had to say.
Looking live at the staging area in downtown Nashville, just really a block north and across the street from the explosion area. This area now under curfew, no one in and out. They're trying to keep this area safe. And you see the officers there securing the area. They're also still doing their job. They're still trying to determine, as you heard the Metro Police Chief talk about, some kind of matter that believed to have been human remains was discovered. That's yet to be determined, but something has been discovered that has been confirmed now. He did say that as of now there have been no fatalities, and we know that only 3 Metro Police officers, 3 individuals, were injured in this blast. The investigation will continue. We did not hear from any of the federal officials who now are in charge of this investigation, the ATF and the FBI. When we will hear from them, we don't know yet. They may want to do more of an analysis before they release any more information about what they have determined of this bomb scene, whether this was a one-off of just this person, was there any connection to somebody else. Again, the information they need the most is where this van came from, who owned it. If you can help out there, if you recognize it, we put this picture on the air. We will continue to do so. Please call the number at the bottom of your screen, 800-CALL-FBI. This could be a real linchpin to solving this case.
Absolutely. And Chief Drake saying they found tissue on the scene that could be remains. So they are investigating that. They said it's been sent off to the lab. We mentioned that that curfew is in place. It will remain in effect until Sunday the 27th at 4:30. But Mayor Cooper was very clear that for 2nd Avenue specifically will probably linger for days, if not weeks after, as they need to rebuild that area. That's going to be right now the parameter is James Robertson Parkway to 4th Avenue North, Broadway, and the Cumberland River. He said that parameter will be closely monitored by law enforcement. They want to protect those that own businesses in that area as well that can't quite get to them at this time because that investigation is underway. And this is going to be a long process as these business owners who have already struggled have to work to not only fix their building, their structure, but then get their operation back up and running again.
And you see on our screen, intentional explosion downtown is what we're labeling it. Mayor Cooper, you could hear in his voice, was angry when he said it was a deliberate bomb. And not only intentional, but deliberate and with resolve. And he was just as strong with his comments as he said about this community feeling anger and determination and resolve to not only survive this, but to build back and to get 2nd Avenue and all these businesses and these buildings that were damaged repaired if possible and back in operation if possible.
Yeah, and it's like, insult to injury already in the year that is 2020, right? Starting with the tornado. I don't have to tell you, you've lived through it, but also on a Christmas morning that was so peaceful and beautiful with the white snow blanketing some of the areas. And now here we are juxtaposed with that fire on your screen. But we've been receiving so many videos and pictures that have come into the newsroom. If we can kind of take you back to that blast, if you're just joining us on this Christmas, if you're with your family, I'm sure you've been following the news. But again, here's some perspective around town from throughout the day. We have been live for you, continuing coverage since this happened at 6:30. At 5:30 in the morning is when we heard about the shots that were fired. That call came in. Metro Police responded. We now know 6 were on the scene. They saw the suspicious RV spotted. It was putting out a message telling everyone to evacuate the area. Music would then play. Then they said a bomb would be detonated. An audio countdown began around 6:15. At this point, Metro Police were going door to door, trying to make sure that people were evacuated and that they were safely removed from the area. They were clearing those buildings, and then 6:30, of course, you know that RV explosion happened here. And we heard from Chief Drake, while 3 people are in stable condition injured, right now he is saying there is tissue matter that is, quote, all over the area that we still need to investigate.
Let's take you back downtown live as the sun has set and the cold temperature remains. News 2's Chelsea Bindfor is at the scene. Chelsea, what more can you tell us?
Yeah, Bob, that press conference just wrapped up here. Mayor Cooper called this afternoon a terrible day for downtown residents and business owners and for all of Nashville. He says it's going to be quite some time before 2nd Avenue is back to normal. He also mentioned that he's talked to Governor Lee and FEMA about declaring a state of emergency to get resources to help this part of downtown rebuild. Of course, investigations still continuing on here tonight. He says investigators are not going to rest until this is solved. He also mentioned that 6 officers ran towards danger this morning. They saved a lot of lives. Remarkably, no pronounced fatalities yet. Alex, you just mentioned that in this press conference, they were talking about some tissue that may or may not be human remains down there. But the overall message of today is relief and resolve. And we have a soundbite from Mayor Cooper now, I think.
I think the message of today is we are going from relief now to resolve, to catch those folks and to rebuild our city. And one more challenge in Nashville's 2020, but we will get through it, and we're grateful to our first responders. And never, you see once again, these officers running into danger to help save lives and injury. It's inspiring.
Now, the fire chief also spoke after Mayor Cooper and said there are structural engineers checking out some of the buildings down there at 2nd and Commerce to check the integrity of some of those buildings where the explosion, near where the explosion happened. So, again, we will continue to bring you live updates here from the media staging area. Bob and Alex.
All right, Chelsea, thank you so much. We have some drone footage that we want to show you just to give you some perspective, as Mayor Cooper has said that we are seeing some catastrophic damage to the historic area that is 2nd Avenue. This kind of gives you perspective. You can see the smoke there through the area, but this is the stretch that we're going to watch, and what he is saying needs to be rebuilt, Bob.
Yeah, we were telling you earlier today, these historic structures, actually all of 2nd Avenue is a historic district. These buildings were built back in the 1870s and 1890s, and so they've been around a while. And for them to survive tornadoes and all kinds of other weather activities, and now this, and now we'll have to see if they survive this, because the structural integrity has yet to be determined. And as the mayor said, and the fire chief said, a lot of these buildings, 41 at least damaged. One we know has collapsed. There's been one building collapse. We certainly don't want any more of that, but they can't let people get back into these buildings until they determine if they are safe. And that's going to be a while. That's the next step that Metro is involved with, the federal government will be involved with, as determine the structural integrity of all these buildings along 2nd Avenue.
And you know, you put in the complication of the water issue too. We saw some water lines had broke. Of course, the fire department trying to douse out flames. All of that complicates the situation, as you see the freezing with the cold temperatures as they try to get in there and just not only investigate, but before they can, as you were saying, to make sure that these buildings are even sound for them to step foot into.
Yeah, it contracts and expands, and that loosens the mortar, and that causes all kinds of problems with the flooring, and you just don't want that to happen, because it does test the integrity of these buildings.
And you know, that is partially why the mayor has said that he has put in that curfew to make sure not only the investigators can do their job, but simply for your safety, because there could be more. That is the ripple effect of this. If other structures collapse or any facades kind of break apart because of this, but that curfew isn't in place until the 27th, which is Sunday at 4:30. That parameter right now, James Robertson Parkway, 4th Avenue North, Broadway, and Cumberland River. But it is incredibly cold out there. We've been talking about resources. If you or someone that you love has been displaced, the Red Cross has been partnering with East Park Community Center, which is 700 Woodland Street, to make sure that you have a safe place to be tonight, so that you are fed and you are warm. There's a lot of things that are going on here through the area. We are still waiting to see about communications as far as 911 systems and the airport as well. A lot is still disrupted. Go ahead, Bob.
While 911 systems were down and are down still in some areas, Metro Dispatch was sending crews into the war zone, as it were. Let's listen to some of what took place this morning as this was taking place.
Unaware how many. We have heavy structural damage to all these buildings. We've had several walk out. We're going to try to get upstairs to the loft at 160 and see how many.
Copy. I'm going to stage your EMS units, then I'll have them come in on second, right there at Commerce to the stage, and I'll get you some help. Command to Engine and Rescue 12. If you report to me at second and Church, I'm going to assign you with Rescue 2. Command to the responding USAR. Are you en route yet?
Control and command, they took it quickly, and they moved folks in there quickly, and they did their job with remarkable poise.
Absolutely. Valencia Wicker is standing by now. She is close to where that bomb exploded. Valencia, I know that you were at the conference here as well, speaking with the mayor. What can you tell us?
Well, you know what? It's been a long 11-hour shift for those investigators who are here and have been here much of the day. I tell you what, when we first got here onto the scene, I mean, the number of law enforcement and first responders here was just astronomical. Certainly, that has slowed down a bit, but I can tell you or show you exactly what we see here now. There are still people here. Looks like to be investigators and firefighters. They are still going through that debris. I know the sun has gone down quite a bit, but as you can see, there's still a lot of work to be done here. A little bit of the perimeter has been opened up, but it still took quite a bit to kind of get here, to get an eye on what people are calling the epicenter of this explosion. I can tell you a little bit of a good news for all those AT&T customers. I just received my kind of first text message in the last few hours. So if that's any indication, then that should be some indication that the folks here downtown, if you have AT&T, that those airways are starting to open up. Now, we can also tell you that the American Red Cross opened a what they are calling a reception center over at a community center, East Park Community Center. At the time that we left, they were still there, open, waiting for people who had been displaced to go there if they need any sort of resources, if they need a warm place to stay, they need clothing. That is where the folks can go. That's where they will be. We do not know exactly how many people at this time have been displaced, but of course there are certainly several resources out there from the American Red Cross. Of course, we are going to keep you updated as we learn more information about exactly what's developing here. As far as everything is indicating, that we can tell you that they are going to be here for some time. We do not yet have kind of like that end point, if there is an end point when it comes to this investigation, but we can tell you that there is still a lot to be unfolded. Back to you all.
All right, thank you very much, Valencia. Let's go out to News 2's Chelsea Beinfort. She is with the mayor. Chelsea?
Thank you.
Yeah, Bob, we just stepped up next to Mayor Cooper here, so I just wanted to ask you a few more questions. During the conference, you mentioned something about a 4-year-old girl. Was she injured?
Well, she was not injured, and it's part of the celebration of our great heroes who rushed to the scene and got people out. She and her mom and her family were taken over in a shelter situation, and she is fine. She and her family were here for Christmas, and that big event happened around her. It's one of the reasons that there's so much relief. It could have been so much worse. It'll be always a question why on Christmas Day would such a terrible thing happen. But I think relief now has to change to anger and determination and resolve to rebuild second. It's going to be a while before it can come back, to use all our resources to get that done. And to emerge stronger as a city, and then also to catch these guys, or these people, these perpetrators, these culprits. It's a terrible crime to take place anywhere on Christmas Day. We're grateful that there were not more injuries, but this is a terrible crime, and I want to have another press conference with the FBI when we catch these folks and congratulate them the same way that we need to thank these first responders. I mean, what a year of first responders. You know, the doctors and the nurses and now the police and the fire join them in a circle of honor.
Can you make any further comment about the type of bomb? That might be a question for Chief Drake. But
well, it is a question for Chief Drake. I will say that even if they knew, I'm not sure they would say or be allowed to say. I think the one thing to note about the bomb is it was big. You know, it was big. The amount of debris thrown up and down the street would tend to magnify the shock wave from the bomb. But it was big. It was not some accident. It was a deliberate, planned attack of some size.
And we were just talking off camera. It's been a heck of a year for Nashville. I mean, what has your city gone through since March?
Well, those who lived through the tornado in their neighborhoods, you see a small part of tornado damage, level damage on 2nd Avenue. It's hard to relive some of that, but we got through the tornado. We got through the derecho. We're getting through COVID. We will get through this. We're going to assemble the resources to rebuild and come back stronger. But in this case, we're going to need to catch the culprit. And it's just one of these hard things that cities have to go through, but we can do it. And we're doing it with the assistance of awesome people. And now that's our law enforcement partners that we're going to lean on right now to get this done.
All right. Thank you very much. And Merry Christmas, Mayor Cooper.
Merry Christmas.
All right. With that, Bob and Alex will send it back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Chelsea. Also, this investigation is going to continue on into Christmas night. There it is, live from our Nissan Stadium camera, shooting across the Cumberland River to where the staging area is. These dedicated officers from the federal government as well as Metro Police, they're on duty. They're working throughout the cold night, throughout their Christmas, and that task is going to continue for some time. These live pictures show you the determination and the willingness of these folks to work on holidays. You know, the holidays don't stop crime, sadly, and now it's their job to try to solve this, find out what happened, and make determinations about the structural stability of these buildings to make sure all of Nashville is safe, that would need to come back into this area, and also to make sure the folks that are in the area stay in the area under the the quarantine so that they don't disrupt the investigation.
Absolutely. They want to make sure that that curfew is in place
Curfew,
so they
that's
can
the
do
word
it.
I couldn't find.
You know, but quarantine works for this year too, Bob. So either way, you were safe. So that curfew is in place. We want to rewind here, take you back moments before that explosion happened. We have some incredible video that shows a man simply walking his dog in the morning. Now remember, police were in the area because they were responding to a call that shots had been fired. So right here, you can see through the doorway of this camera a man and his dog. From the right to the left, you'll see a police officer start to approach him, telling him to get out of the area.
Wow.
And then the explosion knocked to the ground there. We were actually able to catch back up with this gentleman. Let's show this to you one more time, though, a closer perspective. You can tell that they're having a conversation here, he and the officer that's coming up into the view in just a moment.
Amazing they survived it.
I know. Ugh. Unbelievable. So we spoke to this gentleman several times today. He really gives us a step-by-step walkthrough of what was going on. Let's see if we can go ahead and take that.
A little after 6 o'clock, I was taking our German Shepherd, who's there on the floor, taking her out to go to the bathroom. And when I stepped outside, I noticed there was police cars at each corner with their lights on. The officer was in the middle of the road of 2nd Avenue walking towards me, telling me to evacuate. And I said, why do I need to evacuate? And right then, boom, the bomb went off. So his back was to the explosion. I was looking at him, and it was just a half a block down the road. So I immediately looked up and saw the explosion. I could see the flames and everything, and I could tell that it was coming from the side of the street where the AT&T building was. And when I looked at our video footage of the explosion, our door actually blew wide open, and then it has a closer, and it closed itself back. I checked our alley cameras, and our back door also blew wide open, and then I realized a little later that all the back doors of the buildings behind us, some of them were still wide open, and there was windows and shards of glass and everything everywhere. The whole alley's just full of glass out there.
Yeah, when you think of the amount of glass on 2nd Avenue that went flying in that explosion, it's just truly remarkable more people weren't hurt. We can tell you we've learned that the federal response as far as us learning more information tonight is not going to happen. There's not going to be any more briefings. Not really unusual, especially on the first day of an investigation that they have taken over. We will keep in close contact with them on Facebook and Twitter. They will announce when they're going to be doing any more briefings. They're working with Metro Police, but as far as the FBI and other federal agencies working this investigation, we are not going to hear from them anymore on this Christmas night.
And we've been talking about the effects of telecommunications through the area. We are so interconnected. Not only email, phone systems, 911 call centers are all impacted by this, but flights as well. We heard that some people were in the air and told that the flight could not land because there were telecommunication issues issued by the FAA here in Nashville. So let's get to Josh Breslow. He has more information about where that stands, how that's being impacted. So many people are traveling these days.
Yeah, I want to go over that once again, Alex, here. Earlier this afternoon, it was around 3 o'clock or so. We told you that the FAA temporarily stopped flights that were out of International Airport here in Nashville. So we're talking about, like you said, people were in the air and found out that they couldn't actually land at the airport there. This all, of course, due to that telecommunications issue caused by this morning's bomb explosion. So the hope was to restore flights again by about 3:30. Clearly, that did not happen. However, Nashville International Airport just tweeting out here saying that most flights are resuming, but there may be some delays. So they're urging anyone planning to fly out this Christmas Day to track your flight before you do head to the airport. You can do that, of course, at flynashville.com. There are going to be some delays, but most flights here are now resuming at Nashville International Airport just within the last few minutes or so.
Josh, can I ask you a quick question? I want a personal perspective. You've talked about hearing the explosion this morning. Did you actually hear it or did you feel it here? I know there was some shaking. Talk about when it went off. Could you actually hear the explosion?
No, so we never actually heard anything. We were in the studio. I believe we were actually during a commercial break, and we heard everything start shaking above us. It just sounded kind of like I don't even know, just like a shaking above us, and we weren't sure exactly what was going on at that point. The lights in the studio, as you can see there, kind of started to shake, and the director was in my ear and said, what was that? And I said, I don't know. Is somebody on the roof? We thought, maybe it's Santa. We didn't know what was going on. We were making jokes and trying to figure it out. Then just a few minutes later, we see on the actual cameras there downtown that heavy police presence, the heavy fire presence, everyone in that downtown area, and we knew something was going on. We see the big plume of smoke out there and realized this was an explosion that happened. It was crazy because we thought maybe it was an earthquake or something. Turns out it was not, but we definitely could feel it in the studio.
Start shaking, you know something big's going on somewhere. Josh Breslow, appreciate the personal perspective, as it were. Let's take you back downtown. This is, again, some of the video we've seen earlier today, initial response from those who were sent to take on the danger and try to figure out what had happened and try to keep it from getting any worse, which they did and have been doing all day long. Now comes the part where they try to figure out why and try to figure out who is responsible. That's going to be the next few days, maybe longer, as they work to determine where the van came from, who owned the van, who was driving the van, was it stolen, was it leased? All those questions will help them get to a suspect and learn more about why this explosion was planted today.
In a day of technology, everyone seems to have a camera. Thank you to those that have been sending us their perspective and giving us permission to put them on air. We have Ring video right now that we want to show you that you can really hear the blast. If I remember correctly, this is out of Donaldson.
Yes.
So that's miles and miles away from where we are on 2nd Avenue, hearing that explosion. Not only can you hear it here in Donaldson, but you could hear it in Mount Juliet. We had reports of people hearing it a little farther west of the city as well. But we also want to take you back to where investigators stand at this moment in time. We were hearing Chief Swan saying that it is most important to them right now to secure those buildings. They have an urban search and rescue team that is there going through the structures to make sure that they are structurally sound so investigators can get in there and continue to piece together what happened. Something else that stood out to us is that Chief Drake was talking about the countdown of that RV, saying that it was going to explode, music playing in between that countdown as the seconds ticked on there. But now he is saying there was tissue that could be remains all over the area that they are continuing to investigate. So we're waiting to find out if someone was killed in this explosion. At this point, they are not going so far as to say that, but they're calling it catastrophic damage to the historic area of 2nd Avenue, and that it will take some time for that area to come back.
I'm looking forward to the time when they can tell us a little bit more, when the ATF folks can give us an idea of the size of this bomb, because the video we have shown, you can almost feel through the screen the concussive force of the size of this massive explosion through some of these videos. And it's going to be interesting to see how large it was. And it's going to be a big bomb. I mean, I'd love to hear your husband's perspective, military folks. I was in Afghanistan in 2002 and saw bombs being imploded on runways on purpose and could see the concussive force of it was nothing compared to the size of this bomb. These, of course, were landmines, but this bomb was big.
And you think of the pressure cooker bomb scenario as well. I was in New York City when we had an incident, and that doesn't compare to this. You know, this is such a huge volume, and you could see by the weight of the truck that thing, it appears to be to me, that it was packed full. And you can hear Mayor Cooper kind of say that as well. He was like, this was deliberate. This was a huge bomb. It was intended to do damage, and it did.
We're looking at the video, and it's incredible video that people lived through this and were not injured. This is, I believe that was an apartment complex. His apartment, the ceiling had collapsed, and this is what he greeted to on the front door, the fires burning on 2nd Avenue. And on 2nd and on 1st, windows pulled in from the concussive force as it drew air out of 2nd Avenue and went upward. Windows shattered everywhere. There's just a sea of glass on 2nd Avenue, 1st Avenue, and other areas. These agencies are using drone technology to scour roofs to make sure that there's no unexploded explosive that may have been left behind, if there's any evidence that they can't see from the ground. All these buildings in this cold weather, they're going to be affected with broken glass and broken windows. The heat off now, that deteriorates for the people who have apartments there. All their belongings are left inside under these weather conditions, causing more issues. So none of this is going to be easy as these investigators, this was earlier today, scouring the scene. There you see a chunk of this building just gone from the force of this explosion. Windows just gone, completely removed and the brackets themselves blown inward. Just a remarkable sight when you think about the fact that no one died.
Absolutely. I'm texting back and forth with Chelsea Beinfor, who was on the scene, and she was able to pull Chief Drake aside. She has more information for us about the gunshot, so she's working to get that together. So you'll want to stay with us. She has a very interesting perspective. He gave her some new information that really does help kind of piece together some unanswered questions that we had. So we'll be hearing from her in just a few moments. But you can clearly see here some of the damage, Bob. You've been talking about it as well. And look at that water running down the sidewalk. That's what the chief was talking about with the fire department. That's what they're afraid will freeze and shift and crack in this historic buildings and potentially cause more structural damage.
Look at Rosario's Grill. That's the back. That's First Avenue. You can see where the concussive force pulled those windows in. The other side of that building is where the explosion happened, and it just pulled the windows completely in and busted out a bunch of them up on top. It was a massive force. And laying on the roof there, I can't see. That looks like something has collapsed on the left part of the screen.
I heard someone earlier that was familiar with this vantage point. I'm not sure if it was a resident, but they said, but they said that that's not how it typically looks. They said that this clearly has debris that's landed on the rooftop. So that also is adds to the layer of investigating. You're on the ground, you're in the buildings, and now you're on rooftops.
And there are people inside that building, the AT&T building, trying to restore AT&T service. That is happening slowly, but there's still an awful lot of people without internet service, without phone service, 911 systems that are not working right now as we watch the plume from this explosion at 6:30 this morning on 2nd Avenue. Incredible sight. You can see the twin spires of the AT&T building, and this plume goes way above that. It's twice the size of that massive building, which is at least 35, 38 stories tall.
And we're just getting an update here. I wanted to see, we spoke earlier about Cincinnati police investigating a suspicious vehicle that was running near a federal building, and it seems as though they are still investigating. It doesn't seem as though there's been any more developments in that breaking news we brought you. It could be just a precaution to make sure clearly with what's going on here, but there was a suspicious vehicle that was spotted in Cincinnati that police are continuing to investigate there.
We can tell you now, Haley Wilgus just sent me this information. BNA now, most flights are resuming, so that slowdown has been stopped, and they're putting flights back in the air, although because of the delay, it may cause some other delays as the domino effects take part, but it looks like flights are starting to resume at Nashville International Airport on this Christmas night. That is some good news.
And as we give you the perspective of the timeline here, we're talking at 5:30. So these people for 12 hours, these first responders have been dealing with this scene, you know, with those shots fired initially. They responded there because of the of those shots fired. And then at 6 o'clock, that suspicious RV was spotted. Now the audio countdown we learned from Chief Drake was broken up by music that was playing. They were told that the RV was then putting out a message for people to evacuate the area. Police began clearing the buildings, and at 6:30, that RV explosion took place. And since then, we've been watching as first responders have been there. 6 police officers were on the scene at the time of the blast. Thankfully, none of them sustained any serious injuries. 3 people are in stable condition and were taken to local hospitals this morning.
That was really one interesting piece of new information from Chief Drake, in that the message being played was interrupted by music being played, and then the message returned again, and that happened a couple of times while police officers were responding to the scene. In other words, it emphasized strongly, after giving it a break, that this is going to happen and to be aware and warning people to leave the area. But to be interspersed with music was an interesting tidbit that the chief shared with us.
And I would love for us, if we're able to do this upstairs, to play the video of the gunshots that what originally brought police to the scene. Chelsea's going to have an update from the chief about exactly what went down here. So just to put this in your mind, so if you're at home and you're just joining us, to hear those shots fired, to know what those people that were barricaded in their homes trying to figure out what was going on early on Christmas morning, 5:30 in the morning. Okay, here it is for you to give you some perspective. These are strung together. This actually happened over a 45-minute period. These were those consistent shots. Take a listen.
I counted 21 shots, maybe more, and there was some speculation, was it real or was it recorded? Those sounded awful real.
And Chelsea said she has an update that she'll be able to bring us in just a couple minutes that goes into more detail about that. Moments ago, I talked to you about a suspicious vehicle in Cincinnati. Let's go ahead and get to Josh Breslow. You have an update?
Yeah, so Cincinnati police had been telling us about the situation that was ongoing outside the federal building with an RV that they considered to be suspicious over in that area. It's outside the federal building at 6th Street. They said it was suspicious because of the situation going on here in Nashville earlier this morning. But they just actually tweeted out, the police department did, saying the incident on 6th Street has concluded without incident. All roadways have reopened. This is not anything out of the ordinary in Cincinnati. They just honestly at this point wanted to make sure there was nothing suspicious as a result of what we did see here in Nashville. But that Cincinnati situation has cleared. There is nothing suspicious about the RV in that area and nothing, any kind of issues going on there as a result.
A little bit of good news, no conspiracy, no copycat that we know of. That's always good news.
Yes.
6 o'clock here on this Christmas night, there's the van in question. If you know anything about that van, recognize that van, knows whose van that is, give that number at the bottom of your screen a call, 800-CALL-FBI. For those of you folks on this Christmas night enjoying your Christmas dinner, here's a quick update of what we've been dealing with here in Nashville all day since 5:30 this morning when the shots that Alex was talking about, we just heard, were fired downtown. 4 different volleys, at least 20, 25 different shots were heard. That was immediately called to police, which brought in first responders who saw at the time a suspicious RV parked next to the AT&T building on 2nd Avenue. The investigation continued. Moments later, that RV began with a message. First, telling people there was an explosive inside or near the area, there was going to be an explosion and to leave. Then with music, then the announcement again, then music, then the announcement again. As soon as that announcement came, those officers began their job, moved forward. At least 6 to 8 were in the area and went forward, clearing those buildings, getting people out of the blast zone. They were in the zone when it exploded at 6:30. All survived. None were injured. 3 officers were hurt during the debris flying and the explosion. They are all in stable condition tonight.
And I discussed back and forth. There was some question on whether or not those bullets that we heard in that video a moment ago were actually real, or if it was being played through the audio-visual, the speakers, from the RV through the area. Well, Chelsea Beimfor is live at the scene. And Chelsea, I understand that you spoke to Chief Drake, and give us some more clarity about that.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, the answer is it could be both. But I did ask Chief Drake after the press conference. I said there's been some confusion here about those gunshots. We obviously just heard that video a few minutes ago, and I think Bob said he counted around 21. So Chief Drake did confirm they found at least 3 shell casings in the area where the explosion was. Of course, there could have been more, but there's a lot of debris down there this afternoon. I do want to point out about 10 seconds ago, before you tossed to us, there were 2 Metro police cars that went flying, and I mean flying, down Korean Veterans Boulevard. So not sure if that is related to this or another type of crime, but we will try to ask some questions about that. Chief Drake also, of course, mentioned the wonderful job that first responders did here this afternoon, this morning. We're going to play a soundbite from his recent press conference about that.
These officers didn't care about themselves. They didn't think about that. They cared about the citizens of Nashville. And they went in, and we'd be talking not about the debris that we have here, but also maybe potential people. So with that said, the officers saved lives today, and their heroism is to be noted.
They certainly saved a lot of lives here this afternoon. Mayor Cooper also just told us a few minutes ago that one of the lives they saved was that of a 4-year-old girl. She was in town with her mother visiting relatives for Christmas, and they were evacuated and are okay tonight. We're going to toss it back to you guys in the studio, Bob and Alex.
Thanks, Chelsea. I always talk about the smartness of our viewers. A good friend of mine, one of our viewers, Don Schlitz, Hall of Fame songwriter here in Nashville, has a great point. He wants to know what kind of music was playing. It might be a hint, and he's got a great point. And we don't know what kind of music it was, but maybe investigators will give us a little bit more information about what the music was playing, if it's part of the message or not.
And there's been no indication yet, as the FBI has taken the lead, as to when we will hear from them as they continue to do their investigation there. We did hear Mayor Cooper say he looks forward to the time that he can stand next to them and say that here is what happened and these people have been brought to justice. But at this time, we do know that that investigation entails some tissue that could be remains. That's according to Chief Drake. But thankfully, as we know, no one has been reported to have been killed in this explosion yet, but we are waiting to see confirmation. But 2nd Avenue, catastrophic damage, according to Mayor Cooper, that historic area, 41 buildings damaged and potentially more. He is saying that TEMA will assist FEMA to rebuild 2nd Avenue. Governor Bill Lee is, according to Cooper, putting in a civil emergency order to make sure that we get the fundings and the people needed to help that happen.
A little bit of a nice move of the partisan divide closed a little bit with the Republican governor and the Democratic mayor, although it's a non-traditional mayoralship, there's not a party affiliation, coming together to kind of bond and say, we will fix this. We will build back 2nd Avenue and help the folks who are hurting tonight, those who lost their homes, those who lost their businesses. And it's going to be an effort. 41 buildings, that's a big amount, that's a large amount of buildings that could take a lot of restoration work to be viable again. The people that live there may not be able to get back into those buildings for weeks, for longer. We don't know. They may have to find alternative housing. The folks there tonight, there are plans in place and more work being done. If anybody needs housing tonight, that's going to be cared for by the city. They're working on that with the Red Cross and other organizations. But just a lot of uncertainty as we continue. You know, we're almost 12 hours into this disaster happening now, and still a long, long way to go.
Absolutely. Valencia Wicker is standing by. She has some more information. She's been on the scene throughout the day for us. Valencia, what can you tell us?
Well, you know what, Alex, you are getting a live look at the epicenter of this explosion. In fact, this is the very place where investigators found those bits of remains that you were just talking about a few moments ago. Not long ago, we saw a group of officers actually shoveling some of the debris, moving some of that debris. It seemingly they were getting as much, information and clues that they can to try to piece this investigation together. Of course, as we move closer in, you can start to see some silhouettes. There are far back into the scene. You see that there are still investigators there, just a handful. This is much smaller than what we've seen all day. As you can see, there is one officer still here at the post, just keeping an eye on everything. There is still yellow tape up, which means that, just as Bob mentioned, the folks who live in this area cannot have access to their homes tonight on Christmas night. There's no access for them. So a lot of the streets around exactly where this happened are still shut off, but still a smaller perimeter than what we saw when we arrived first thing this morning. Of course, there is no signal, as you just mentioned. There's no signal of when this will be done, when these streets will be open, when normalcy will start to come back. We do know that the RV was, what you're looking at right now is exactly where the RV was found, and kind of you see a little bit of those that shows charred cars that are still there. So there's quite a bit of evidence that's still here at the scene, which is probably why investigators want to ensure that everyone stays away from this area. Now, I can tell you that the American Red Cross does have some resources in place for the folks who live here and cannot get home tonight. They set up a center to give people warmth and to offer clothing and some packaged foods. Of course, there is parameters on what they can offer and cannot offer because of COVID-19, but the American Red Cross is here to help. If you can't get to the center, of course, you can give them a call and they can help you out there. Again, this is kind of the calmest that we've seen, the scene down here, just a handful of investigators there in the dark going through some of the debris. We have that one officer here with lights kind of keeping an eye on the scene, that yellow tape keeping folks away and behind. Of course, Bob and Alex, we will keep an eye out here as things develop. But for now, back to you.
Thank you very much, Valencia. The key component now, finding the RV. I misspoke. I called it a van earlier. I apologize. The recreational vehicle that was parked in front of the AT&T building. We've got a picture of it. We've shown it to you. The FBI, the ATF, Metro Police, everybody is searching for this van. If you know anything, or this recreational vehicle, the RV that was sitting in front of that building this morning at 6:30 when it exploded, obviously filled with explosives of some kind. You can see in the picture there's a driver in the RV. It doesn't look like anyone else is in there. We've been trying to enhance the words on that and haven't been able to do it yet to see what is written on there, if that will lead to any clues. I'm imagining the investigators have detailed it a little stronger, and they know exactly what it says and what model this is and what year this RV is and where it came from and who owns it by now. And part of the investigation that Valencia was showing us is in the scene where what's left of this is being investigated closely to find if there's a VIN number or a license plate or something identifiable to find out where this RV came from. It has been reported that it was spotted in the area earlier today. It was spotted possibly a day before this in the area by some other folks. None of that confirmed, but those are the discussions that are being looked at that the FBI is looking at. They have that information. So there's a possibility this thing was looking for locations or planning this event days in advance. We wait to see if that isn't true, but it looks like that's what was going on.
And we circle back around to those small businesses that have already been so impacted. And the year that is 2020, they are banding together now, trying to put a reward together to make sure that whoever did this or whomever did this, if there's multiple parties, are brought to justice. Nashville Strong is the hashtag. We spoke to Butch Spiriton and CVC earlier today, and he has already said that $35,000, and it is growing, has been put together for a reward to be put into place. I was just sent this by a friend of mine, texted that there is now a GoFundMe account that has been put together by some of these small businesses right here in town. Ensemble Nashville, Pride and Glory Tattoo, $10 boutique. They're doing all that they can to try to support the small businesses that are impacted by the attack. Their goal is to raise $50,000. Let's see, it was created a couple of hours ago. They're up to $1,800. So many people have been looking for a way to help, and maybe this is the way to do it at this moment in time, to support those that are already struggling by a senseless act that they had no control over.
Nashvillians always come together to help if they can and do what they can to help when needed. Fortunately, everyone seemed to have survived this event, even some of the folks who lived in that area. What a horrific way to start your Christmas morning. We spoke with a couple of the people. Here's what one gentleman told us he experienced.
On 2nd Avenue, but we live on the interior of the building, and I almost couldn't believe that it would have been gunshots that I heard, because we don't live near either 2nd Avenue or 1st Avenue. We're in the middle of the building. So I was perplexed, but thought, maybe it was somebody slamming doors or something. But then about 10 minutes later, there was a whole nother round of guns fire, this time more gunfire and louder. And we got scared and got up out of bed and barricaded our door to our apartment. And then about 15 minutes later, again, there was a whole nother round of gunshots. This time, it was way, way more gunshots. The first time, it was 3 shots. The second time, it was 5 shots. The third round, it was probably about 10 or 15 shots. And we were petrified. We were sitting in our apartment with the door barricaded, with the lights out, not talking because we were scared to make noise. And then about 20 to 30 minutes later, the cops somehow had gotten into the building and started pounding on the doors, alerting all his residents to get out of the building and to leave on the back side, 1st Avenue, not to go near 2nd Avenue. And they didn't tell us what it was. Our car was parked over on the other side of the gulch, and we went over and got our car and was sitting in our car not knowing what to do. And at that point, we had been sitting in the car for about 10 minutes, and then our whole car shook, and it felt like a bomb went off, and we looked over towards 2nd Avenue from the gulch, and we saw flames and sparks, and you could see not only the smoke, but you could see the explosion sparks fly up into the air, probably 300 feet into the air. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, needless to say, terrifying.
Blockaded his front door to the apartment, because it wasn't just like it was a round of shots and it was done. It was a round, and then minutes go by, another round, and you're like, did we really just hear that? And then 15 minutes later, and another round again. And at that point, your mind is now thinking, and I'm thinking the shots are in the building. I don't know if they were or not. I don't know. But all I know is that at that moment, I thought that they were. And I was like, I'm going to have to fight my way, jump. I didn't know what I was going to do. Literally.
It's such a bit like Broadway, I mean, busy area typically. I mean, not necessarily at this time of day on Christmas, but I mean, this is a popular area in Nashville.
Yeah, well, what I was really concerned about was the fact that it is a really, really busy area, but also it was an hour that you shouldn't be hearing stuff like that. I mean, 5 o'clock a.m. is kind of what you would call kind of downtime. So I was really concerned. I still don't know what's going on. Don't know when I'm going to get back in my house. Merry Christmas.
Did you talk to any of your neighbors or see any of them coming out? What were they saying?
They were all coming out. Everybody was bewildered. Nobody knew what was going on. There's a hostel youth hotel right next to the building that we live in. And there was a woman that came out of that one that said the cops had said something about a bomb. She said that when we were still at the building. This was 30 minutes before that explosion. She came out and she said something about a bomb. The police had told her a bomb. Yeah. So evidently there was some sort of knowledge about that bomb because one of my neighbors mentioned it.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry this happened.
Hey.
You can hear the fear in his voice, and why not?
Absolutely.
What a way to start your Christmas day or Christmas morning or any morning for that. Volleys of gunfire, at least 4 different volleys that we counted over about a 20-minute period, at least 21 or more shots fired. Just a horrifying experience.
And knowing that Chief Drake has now said that 3 casings were found on the scene, he does not believe that this was being played through a loudspeaker in the RV. He believes that these were real shots that were fired. The intention still yet unclear, but this is a look right now from Nissan Stadium. We've seen this parking lot kind of ebb and flow throughout the day, the activity here. At one point, we watched what appeared to be FBI investigators on their hands and knees looking at something. They placed it in a box and walked off. This is just to the right of the building of where the explosion took place. So we are seeing here that there's a staging area that is underway. We know that there is a perimeter in place, that curfew that went into in effect at 4:30 by the mayor that's going to last until Sunday the 27th at 4:30, and that's in an effort to not only keep those investigating safe and in the clear, but you as well with some of the debris scattered around the area. I'm trying to work to give you the parameters there as it's James Robertson Parkway, 4th Avenue North to Broadway to the Cumberland River.
Yeah, those investigators are going to be there throughout the night and well into the next several days. New information continues to come in. Let's go to News 2's Josh Breslow at the Alert Desk. Josh?
That's right. So we have been showing you this video all throughout the day here of David Malloy, and we heard from him a bit earlier. He was out walking his dog around 6:30 this morning near 2nd and Commerce. Take a look at this video here. Malloy was out there, approached by an officer who does tell him to evacuate the area. That is when the explosion happens. He and his dog are fine. They were not hurt. But watch in that video. You see the blast. The doors jump open there as a result because this is obviously a huge blast right in that immediate area where the RV did explode. Now take a look at this. This other video is actually inside of his actual residence next door. After the blast, his door is blown over. He then runs inside. You see him run right into the place to take cover right after that. And you can still actually kind of see the officer off in the distance trying to help him to make sure he makes it safely into his residence. That video just coming in, it's kind of the compilation, the second half of the video that we showed you earlier. So we also just got a statement from AT&T in just now. They say that they are putting the full force of their disaster recovery efforts into responding to this morning's explosion here in Nashville, including bringing in regional resources and the national disaster recovery teams. They say, of course, power is essential to restoring wireless and wireline communication. So they're working with law enforcement to get access to their equipment and make the needed repairs. So we're going to bring you updates as we get more information on that, but they're putting their full force, as they say, of their disaster recovery efforts into fixing everything that's going on. We, of course, have these outages with AT&T here in Nashville and the surrounding area. Hopefully, those will be fixed soon. Guys.
All right, Josh, thank you. Yeah, they also say given the damage to the facility, it's going to take some time to restore the service there, but that includes bringing portable cell sites to the area. So it appears as though here in Nashville, they've already set up secondary cell towers to try to make sure that that service is restored.
Yeah, this horrific event of today just adds to what it was going to be the end of a horrific year with the COVID-19 pandemic and the tornadoes in March and the loss of life and the loss of property and businesses. really affected and impacted the Nashville community's tourism industry, country music industry, live venue entertainment. I talked earlier today with Butch Spearden, the president of the Nashville Visitors and Visitors Corporation, and here he talked a little bit about the impact that this adds to the already rough year these people have been trying to survive.
It is, as I said, the livelihoods, and it started with the tornado. It's how do we get people back to work? How do we get some normalcy? And we're nearing a year straight of just one blow after another. We'll figure it out, but I feel for so many individuals out there who are suffering.
And the president of the Nashville Visitors Corporation here in downtown Nashville, talking about the impact of yet another issue affecting the tourism community, the entertainment industry, the hospitality community here in Middle Tennessee. All the hotel workers and hotel employees and live venue workers have just had a horrific year and just hanging on by the skin of their teeth, the bar owners and people on Lower Broadway, all the folks dealing with entertainment aspects in Nashville now, another burden to deal with.
Absolutely, and so many people displaced too. We heard Mayor Cooper say that he had been speaking to families throughout the day, trying to find them a warm place to sleep tonight, because on this Christmas evening it is supposed to be incredibly cold. As we know, it's been cold all day long for us. So if you are looking for somewhere to go, East Park Community Center, which is 700 Woodland Street, the Red Cross is there. They will help feed you, get you a safe place to stay tonight. So if you or someone you love know that they have been displaced, please pass along that information. Something else I wanted to circle back around to, as we talked about the RV, which was captured on surveillance video at 1:22 this morning. Other people have said they think they spotted that RV throughout the day or the upcoming days leading to this explosion. If you have any information, or if you're listening to our coverage, or you happen to see something on video, or maybe there's something on your Ring camera that didn't stand out to you before and maybe now it does, send it to the tip line, 1-800-CALL-FBI. They've also set up an online account as well, www.gov/Nashville. They said that they need all of your leads and they will investigate every single one.
Yeah, this van, or this recreation vehicle, or this RV, is going to be the next real big key to this investigation. If they can determine where it came from, how long it had been in the area, the owner, was it stolen, was it a rental, anything that can lead them to a person of interest or a possible suspect is going to be the real focus of what the investigators are doing, tracking this RV down, finding out how long it was in the area. This picture, the only one we have so far, was taken at 1:22 this morning, roughly 5 hours before the explosion took place. But it was on 2nd Avenue. It was in the area where the explosion was detonated, and it was seen parked there at 5:30 in response to the gunshots that were being fired. So we know that this RV was sitting on 2nd Avenue from the beginning at least 5:30 this morning.
And let's go ahead, and that's a perfect transition, because we actually do have some dispatch audio from first responders when the call came in and they found out that that RV was there. Go ahead, take a listen.
It's to stay back 2 blocks. Repeat, stay back 2 blocks. We've had some type of large explosion, so we can figure out what's going on. We've had a large explosion, so we can figure out what's going on, make sure we don't have any secondaries. Copy. I want everybody to stay at least 1 block away till we figure out exactly what's going on. We've got structural damage for at least 1 solid block.
Truck 9, District 9 on 1st Avenue, Rodizio. There's wood and glass blown out all over 1st Avenue.
Command to all units. Command to all units. I've confirmed with PD. This is an explosive device. I need everybody to stay back at least 1 block. Explosive device in the RV, and then it detonated. It's right in the middle of 2nd Avenue, in between Gay and Commerce. PD has bomb squad en route. I've got everybody holding 1 block off. I've also requested USAR, but we're not going to send anybody down till we can clear that with the EOD folks. We do have a fire, but it appears to be just the vehicle in the middle of the road. We've got heavy structural damage to multiple buildings. And a lot of those buildings have apartments, but I don't know if they're occupied at this time or not. We don't have anybody coming out.
No, at least 6 of those first responders were right in the vicinity of this bomb explosion when it did detonate. All survived. We also know that these brave officers went towards the danger. As they heard the warning that there was a possible explosion, they began to evacuate the buildings. Alex, I play hockey with Metro firefighters and first responders. The last thing they would call themselves are heroes. They would say this is just the job, but it's not just the job. Not everybody can do that. They go towards the danger. And it was good to hear the mayor and the police chief and the fire chief credit these brave men and women who did that today.
It's been exemplified all year,
Yep.
right? They have run to danger over and over from the
Doctors
tornado.
and healthcare workers,
Yes.
first responders for the tornado, and now first responders to this horrific event today.
And Mayor Cooper saying that this is catastrophic damage to the historic area of 2nd Avenue. He said, we are angry, and then we move to determination, and then resolve. So he said that we know that Nashville will rebuild. I feel like we've been saying that a lot this year, and we know it to be true, and we just have to continue to hold firm to that. A civil emergency order by Governor Bill Lee is supposed to be enacted that will allow TEMA to assist FEMA to help bring the money and personnel to rebuild 2nd Avenue. He said this is going to be a long process. We know that there's a curfew put in place through the parameters of this area until the 27th, and then he believes, I'm speaking about Mayor Cooper, he believes that 2nd Avenue will be closed for an extended period of time.
There is a reward that's been posted by the Nashville Visitors and Conventions Corporation. They began with $10,000. That reward has grown. Let's go to the alert desk and News 2's Josh Breslow. Josh?
That's right. So we actually just learned here that on top of that reward, we had the $25,000 from the Nashville Convention and Visitors Corp. Now, we also had $10,000 from Fox Sports, Clay Travis. We have just learned from Marcus Lemonese. He's the chairman and CEO of Camping World. He's also a TV personality. He says that he would like to put up a $250,000 reward to anyone who provides information that leads to the arrest and conviction of the person who did this. So he does say we can't have our streets terrorized like this, as he announced on Twitter that $250,000 reward on top of the $25,000 that will be offered by the Nashville Convention and Visitors Corp and the $10,000 by Clay Travis. Again, $250,000 being offered by the CEO of Camping World. We're about to post this on our website, WKRN.com. Guys,
he's in the recreational vehicle industry that this puts bad light on, and boy, what a way to respond.
Oh, yeah.
Josh Breslow in the alert desk for News 2. Latest information on the reward for any information that leads to an arrest of the suspect in today's bombing.
Absolutely. That's up to $285,000 then that we are seeing through the area. But we also want to think about, when we talk about raising money, we think of those small businesses that have already been so hurt during this pandemic. There's a GoFundMe page that has been put up as well. We're up to close to $2,000 on that we're seeing. We're continuing to put all of this information. I know it's a barrage, and if you're looking to help, I know we all are getting texts and emails from people because that's what Nashvillians do, right? They want to feed you, they want to help you, and we're going to try to compile the perfect way to do that. At this moment in time, it's a little too soon to direct you to the correct path. So as we learn more about what the needs will be, how to feed these first responders, or the money to those that are displaced, or the small businesses now that are waiting to get back, we'll make sure we bring that to you so that you're donating and that the money is going to where you want it to go.
And I've had texts from friends who are working hard trying to identify the make and model and year of this van, and they've got suggestions and pictures. We'll let them share that with the FBI. I'm not going to put any names out there because we don't know yet. But eyes are on this picture. They're checking this thing out, trying to determine what year it is, what make it is, what model it is of a recreational vehicle that was involved in this explosion today. And so the FBI would love to hear from you if you have any information that might help them identify this particular recreational vehicle. So again, we saw this picture earlier today. This is the one we've had so far, the only one. It was at 1:22 this morning, just 4 hours before those shots were fired and only 5 hours before the explosion took place on 2nd Avenue this morning.
We've had some video, too, that gives you a perspective from the skyline, just so you can see the velocity of that explosion. There was one that we played earlier from Cross Point Church. It was the downtown vantage point. To the top right portion of the screen, you could see a massive explosion. I think that's a great visual if you're able to pull it up. Here it is for you. Look at the plume of smoke. And we all are so familiar with the skyline and that iconic building right there, and we see those two towers sticking up and that smoke just covering it to speak to really the strength of that explosion.
The concussion, you can just almost feel it from the sound, how big that concussion was. And and you've seen the pictures and the damage that it caused. You see it before you hear it, but when you hear it, you know it's big.
Yeah. Well, we know that we have been seeing so many developments that are coming as we see the FBI arrive on scene, ATF, Metro Nashville PD still out there, the fire department, everyone working tirelessly. This is another vantage point we showed you too. When the blast first is detonated, it seems as though something shoots out, whether it be shrapnel, whether it be the actual bomb itself, but you'll notice that if you look closely right in the middle of your screen. But just walking you through the day's events, we know at 5:30 this morning, there were reports of shots fired. Now, we've spoken to Chief Drake. Chelsea Bimeford did. He did account for those gunfire. At one point, we thought, is it a recording? But he says 3 shell casings. He didn't say the caliber of the gun, though.
He did not.
3, they sounded like it was a large gunshots there, but we counted at least 21 on the video that we had. So we know that shots were fired. Officers respond to the scene. They spot this suspicious RV. It was parked at 166 2nd Avenue North, right there as we've been showing you in front of the communications hub of AT&T building. An audio countdown began to be played. It was a woman's voice, and she said that they needed to evacuate the area, that a bomb would detonate. Then we found out just an hour or so ago at the press conference, music was played intermittently between this countdown. Police ran door-to-door, heroic efforts, making sure that people evacuated to First Avenue. And then, of course, the explosion that we've been showing you happening at 6:30.
6:30 in the evening on this Christmas night. We're going to be with you until 7 o'clock tonight for our continuing live coverage of this event. We will update, of course, everything on News 2 at 10 and as well as WKRN.com for another half an hour of live coverage. We're going to update the folks who are just joining us of what took place today. At 5:30 this morning, the first shots were fired. There was at least 4 different volleys of several rounds of gunfire on 2nd Avenue. We heard the shots go off. The police have now confirmed they were gunshots. I counted at least 20 to 25 different rounds being fired. At 6 o'clock, the RV was spotted and was labeled as suspicious as it was parked at the AT&T building. Shortly thereafter, 6:15, as Alex was saying, an audio countdown of sorts, a warning of sorts, was played from that RV, advising folks to be leaving the area, that there was going to be an explosion. It was interrupted with music, and then the warning was played again from the RV, and the countdown continued. At 6:15, with that countdown in the air, police entered the area and began clearing buildings of anyone who was inside, anyone who lived in the area, and 15 minutes later, the explosion happened.
And we know we've been talking about the gravity of the situation and how big the parameter of the investigation is as you make your way through the area there. We've been watching from our Nissan Stadium camera. If we can pull that up, let's see what the staging area looks like, because we know that these investigators are going to go not only throughout the night, but for the days to come. We've been watching them kind of scurry back and forth, and it looks as though they do have a tent set up. I wondered if that's what they were doing. Last time we went to this camera, I saw them constructing something. So this may be a makeshift headquarters for them as they are out there in the parking lot so that they can have their teams come in. They'll work around the clock, looking at debris. You know what? That's a great point. Absolutely.
Yeah, these officers are going to be out on the scene, just if nothing else, cordoning off the scene, so there's a little place for them to get warm. They find something, maybe it's a place for them to take to their superior. As you said, this is going to be going on for a while. News 2's Chelsea Bimeford is also in downtown Nashville. Let's rejoin her. Chelsea?
Yeah, Bob, it's definitely cold out here, as you were just mentioning, but we wanted to recap a few things that Mayor Cooper said this afternoon in the press conference. It's Christmas, but he's calling it a terrible day, obviously, for downtown Nashville business owners and residents. We know at least 41 buildings have been damaged. Right now, there are engineers assessing the structural integrity of a few more. Now, Mayor Cooper says at least a dozen businesses down in the area of 2nd and Commerce also damaged from this explosion. Of course, this is in a year that's already been very challenging for businesses and small businesses during the pandemic and the shutdowns. Mayor Cooper says it's going to be a long time before 2nd Avenue returns to normal.
I will go ahead and warn Nashville. It'll be some time before 2nd Avenue is back to normal. It is not going to be the 3 days of the curfew for 2nd Avenue itself. We're not going to rest until those responsible for this outrageous and cowardly attack are brought to justice.
And in a year of tornadoes, civil unrest, a global pandemic, and now a bombing, Mayor Cooper says Nashville is resilient, and he is confident that we will make it through this too. Bob and Alex.
Clay, the mayor seemed really angry about this, this how dare you on Christmas especially, how dare you in my city. Thanks, Chelsea. Stay warm out there.
And we've been watching the reward grow through the area as well. People are angry. They want answers. I'm just doing a quick calculation. It looks as though not only some professionals in the area, the businesses, collectively, we're up to $315,000 for a reward. They want answers, and they want to make sure that whoever or the people involved are brought to justice. Valencia Weaker has been out there all day for us. Valencia, what can you tell us from the scene where you are?
Well, you know what? We are right now exactly at the 12-hour mark from when that explosion literally shook the Music City. And so at this point, we are seeing there are still just a few, from what we can tell, and you can see there in the distance, there's probably 2 or 3 officers there that we can see from here that are still there looking to go through some of that debris that's down there at the epicenter of all of this. There is still an officer who's kind of just keeping all the pedestrians and folks who live in this area away. As you can see, there's still yellow tape. And while the perimeter of everything in this investigation has gotten smaller as the night has gone on, they are still keeping people away, which speaks to Chelsea's point when she's talking about this is a long haul before 2nd Avenue is open. The folks who live here, they will not have access to their homes. They will not have access to their belongings, and we do not have a timeline for when this may open up. So, of course, organizations like the American Red Cross and some, just good Samaritans in the city have kind of come together to offer resources to those who may need it. Of course, for right now, a lot of people may have just gone to friends or family for the day and for the night, but if this investigation or if this street continues to be shut down for days, even weeks, certainly throughout the weekend, this could very well mean quite a bit when it comes to organizations just kind of banding together like Nashville has done. We've seen it all over the 2020. Ever since March, we've seen it over and over again. Businesses coming together, homeowners coming together. In fact, we met a couple a few hours ago. They came downtown with Christmas dinner, looking to offer it to anyone who needed it. And of course, there are some stipulations on what the American Red Cross can take, but just the thought that a family would leave their home in the bitter cold, we're talking 20-some degrees in the bitter cold on Christmas Day, leave their families, pack up Christmas dinner and bring it down here, just speaks to just the magnitude of the togetherness here in the Music City. So right now things seem to be a bit quieter. We did see a few moments ago, we saw a unit. We couldn't quite tell exactly what kind of unit it was, but they were out shoveling through some of that debris. So there's still quite a bit of debris out there. Investigators still kind of piecing through and sifting throughout the night. Of course, as Chelsea has mentioned, we have a long road ahead of us when it comes to this investigation. Guys, back to you.
All right, Valencia, thank you so much. You mentioned the American Red Cross of Tennessee stepping up and trying to help people find shelter. I was just looking at their page. They say something else that I think is really important to note as well. Their integrated care condolence team, which really is mental health experts, are standing by as well. If you were in the area, you were affected by this, you were one of those trapped in your apartment, you heard those gunshots, and you were scared for your life, and you need to speak to someone, reach out to them. They're there for you, and they want to make sure that you know of their resources. I'll
tell you, the federal investigators, the local investigators, they are all very pleased about this growing reward money, because money talks in cases like this. It can pry some information out that could be critical, and that reward fund continues to grow. Let's go back to the Alert Desk and News 2's Josh Breslow.
Quick math here, I can tell you that $350,000, $315 rather, in rewards have been announced so far for an arrest and conviction. Lewis Country Store just announcing a $20,000 contribution to that reward, leading to the arrest and conviction of the Nashville bombing suspect or suspects. They say, quote, "It's a shame that this happened on Christmas Day or any day, as a matter of fact." So they have contributed $20,000 to that growing reward fund. We told you just minutes ago here that Marcus Lemonese, the CEO of Camping World, contributed $250,000 to that fund. Clay Travis with Fox Sports and Outkick donated $10,000, and of course, Nashville Convention Visitors Corporation and its members have contributed $35,000. So again, I added that together, doing some quick math. $315,000 in rewards, and that is just including those 4 people and organizations. So it's likely this is going to keep on growing throughout the night.
Remarkable gesture, Josh, especially from the CEO of Camping World, $250,000. That's quite a donation to bring out some information that hopefully will lead to an arrest or some kind of conclusion to this case as to why it happened and who was responsible.
You know, as investigators still work to piece together the intentions and the motive, we look at all of these different investigators that have descended upon our city here on this Christmas morning. We're going to continue to have coverage for you until 7 o'clock, so hang with us as we continue to get some new information coming into the newsroom here. But you can see with the perspective of these pictures the challenges that they face, not only because of the weather, but because of the circumstances of the day, right? That they're all called out there. Not only that, you have the complications. He's wearing a mask. You're dealing with COVID on top of all of this as well. And then you're seeing the cold temperatures, the freezing, the breadth of the situation as far as the scope of the intense investigation radius. I mean, so much that they are facing right now.
It makes you really proud of the effort and to live in this
absolutely.
community when these folks put it all aside on Christmas Day and run to where their need or their help is needed. And in a situation like this, every one of them was needed. They didn't know how bad this was going to be. When you saw the extent of that explosion, I mean, you would have guessed hundreds of people just lost their lives.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that didn't happen, but now they have to deal with the aftermath. I remember the tornado of '98. And this is what all of downtown Nashville looked like, glass everywhere. And that's what they're going to have to deal with in not just this part of town, but they're going to find broken glass in other parts of town. And that can be a real danger to pedestrians, that if they don't see it, it comes crashing down from above.
Yeah.
There's a lot of danger out there yet, not just in the blast area, but throughout the area that a lot of people are going to have to check and determine and make sure everything is safe, because this event is not over. The explosion is over. It's aftermath, and what problems it will cause, we're still dealing with.
Hence why that curfew is in place until the 27th at 4:30 in the afternoon, just to try to keep people out of that area just for those reasons. We know as of now, 41 buildings have been damaged. 1 has collapsed. This is according to Chief Swan, who was out there talking about the teams that are continuing to try to check to make sure that these buildings are structurally sound, just so investigators can even step foot inside to start their process. So as we continue to look at some of those pictures, those were new images. I hadn't seen those yet that really show you what it looks like up and down 2nd Avenue.
You know, you got to give a real shout out to the leadership of this city too, and the governor for his efforts. But you know, Mayor Cooper's a year plus a few months into his administration. Chief Drake was just named Metro Police Chief not that long ago. Chief Swan has been chief for a couple of years now. I mean, the dedication and the call to action, especially Mayor Cooper, a year plus 3-4 months into this administration, and look what he's dealt with: the tornado, the pandemic, and now this. You can criticize the politics all you want, but the leadership that's been exerted is pretty remarkable and has been consistent by all of the leaders of these departments. And it really is worthy, especially on this Christmas night, of a big thank you for what they've done.
Absolutely. In a time where there's been such discord, right? We just hope that 2021 moving forward, we have some unity as we go to rebuild. Some people from the tornadoes are still trying to pick up the pieces. You've got small businesses that are affected as well. But again, Cooper saying, anger, determination, and then resolve. So he is looking ahead. He already is looking to rebuilding.
The big question now is going to be what's next. And, you know, thankfully, I guess in a way, it's the weekend. So the investigators and those responsible for securing the area, making sure it is safe, have a couple of days where there wouldn't have been many people down there anyway. But Monday will get here quick. And the question is going to be, will everybody be allowed to resume operations on Broadway, the businesses there? What's going to be able to happen on 2nd Avenue in the area that survived, that wasn't damaged? What about the law offices across the street? Will they be allowed inside? When's the determination going to be on the safety of all of these buildings? It's going to take a long time for those investigators of structural stability to get through all of these buildings, and the buildings we're looking at there, they all need to be looked at.
Absolutely.
There's some serious damage there.
And also some evidence that could be exploded on those rooftops. You know, we were talking about how this is really a 3D picture if you look at the ground, or I should say 360-degree picture really, because it's from the ground to the building to the rooftops. Everywhere you look could be a piece of evidence that could lead you closer to why this actually happened. You speak about, Mayor Cooper and Governor Bill Lee working together in this instance. Governor Lee did say that he is going to sign a Civil Emergency Act, which allows TEMA to support FEMA to come and help rebuild 2nd Avenue. And while that is all great and good, I wonder how quickly that will happen, because you bring up a great point. This investigation may linger on, so rebuilding may not happen anytime soon.
Probably not. The crime scene itself will probably remain kind of that way for a while. And just the immediate area is probably a block and a half, maybe 2 blocks of areas where those people are not going to get back into their buildings. Outside of that, it's going to be a question of timing, how long it takes to get people to literally check the stability of these buildings, walk through these buildings, each one of them, to make sure they are secure and safe safe enough for people to re-enter, if nothing else, just to pick up their belongings, much less try to go to work or live in one of these buildings. All of those things are a long way from happening, and going to take a lot of manpower, and going to take a lot of coordination. Which building has been checked? Can we put it off the list? What needs to be done to repair it, to get it operational again or get it safety again? And then getting that work done. An awful lot of things from one event that's going to need to happen before we even begin to think about reopening and rebuilding 2nd Avenue.
And I really do appreciate the transparency between Mayor Cooper, Chief Drake, and Chief Swan as well. Even Matthew Foster at the FBI here, the Nashville headquarters, special agent in charge, they've been really great and responsive in trying to give us the information so that we can pass it along to you at home. There's so many questions, of course, with outages as well. People were curious as to what was going on.
Right.
They didn't have the internet. They couldn't watch us on TV. We were kicked off in some areas. So that's also something that we appreciate. We know that Mayor Cooper is going to continue to talk to us. We haven't yet heard from the FBI. I sent an email over to see if I could speak to Special Agent Foster, if maybe we could get a little bit more information about the timeline, at least, as to what we're looking at. So we're going to continue to follow this clearly for the next couple days.
Not too surprising. The federal authorities work on their own kind of timetable. We did hear from them that they will be notifying us when they have an update to give us. They gave us one quick one. It pretty much said we're going to be investigating what happened here, and that was pretty much all the information. That's not really surprising, but it is very, very helpful to the folks who live here, for the mayor and the police chief and the fire chief to give us the information that they could, that this investigation is in good hands, that we're thankful for this community for coming out and helping, that we're going to do everything we can to get these people back in their homes, back in their businesses, everything we can to rebuild what took place here, while these other investigators look to find who's responsible and make them pay for this crime.
Absolutely. And Chief Drake also giving us a little bit more clarity. We heard from a report earlier that human remains by the blast were found. That was reported by the AP. He is saying at this point they haven't confirmed that anyone was killed, but that there is tissue that could be remains, that there is, quote, matter all over the area that needs to be investigated. So that just also kind of indicates and puts it into perspective that they have a lofty task ahead of them to try to make sure they know exactly what went down.
And while that sounds like it's pretty obvious something happened there, that maybe this about, the obvious thing that is not is they don't know the identity. This could be an animal, could be a dog. We don't know. It's tissue. And so that's what's being determined to find out, one, what this was, and then try to identify it.
I also am curious as this investigation unfolds to find out the caliber of the gun, what they were shooting at. At first, we weren't sure if it was a recording, and Chief Drake did confirm to us that they found at least 3 casings there on the scene. So that will be an interesting component as well, which led up to the explosion.
And was it a distraction? Was it intentional to get law enforcement to come to that area where they would then hear the audio recording that there was a bomb in the area and to evacuate, move people out of the area, which thankfully they did do.
And that shot we just showed you here, this is a pretty good ways away. I'd say 5-6 blocks or so from the blast scene, and they have what is either shrapnel or something. So when you talk about the effects of a major massive blast like that far away, you could cause that much damage.
Yep.
Clearly, there's going to be other stories like this, right? Where someone will say, hey, listen, something shot through my window too at 6:30 in the morning.
And we don't know if it was explosive debris, if it flew that far, if it was one of those bullets that we heard being fired, at least 20, 25 bullets fired in over a period of about 15, 20 minutes. You heard the man describe the frightening situation of being in his apartment and hearing volley after volley of gunfire outside his apartment complex. Here you see some of the interior damage. This is from the apartment of one of the gentlemen who lived there. He came downstairs this is what he saw, to the horror of himself. And the people in the streets, you could hear them sobbing and crying at these sites that were on 2nd Avenue.
I just want to let it hang for a second here. You can hear, the screams of people, the panic in their voices. We've got Chelsea Beimfor standing by for us, too. Chelsea, you've been out there throughout the day. You spoke to Chief Drake as well. What else can you tell us about this investigation as we go into the evening hours?
Yeah, Alex, that video, I was just hearing it in my ear, and that's powerful. That is not something I had heard until today. Until tonight, just when you played it. I think on that note, we should reiterate the heroism of our first responders that Nashville has seen out here today. Chief Drake giving them, of course, a big props in this afternoon press conference. We know at least 6 officers were down there around the time that the explosion happened. They went door to door knocking to get people out. They saved a lot of lives. Here's what Chief Drake has to say about them.
Officers immediately began knocking on doors and evacuating residents here, not knowing if the bomb was going to detonate immediately or if it was going to go off in the time that it was stated.
Now, Chief Drake and Mayor Cooper both mentioned that there have been no other threats today that they've received or that they've seen around town. We know they had the dogs out here searching for any other potential bombs that could have been around the downtown area, but so far, no other threats that have come to fruition. We also are still very unclear about the motive. It's Christmas Day, but no idea why this would have happened. Mayor Cooper says investigators will not rest until this is solved. Alex and Bob.
Thank you so much. And that also speaks to the fact that they had that curfew put into place to keep people safe there.
And some new video coming in, new pictures from the Sobro area. You can see broken glass on some of the areas. This is south of Broadway. You can see on the right side of your screen the glass that was broken in that building. The left side you can see blown completely out. This is what I was talking about earlier. There's an awful lot of glass structures in downtown Nashville, even away from the bomb area. The concussion that was sent by this explosion, you can see south of Broadway is a good ways away from this explosion, and the damage you can see there. I guarantee you that investigators, people that go to work, they're suddenly going to find this kind of damage in other buildings throughout the city, and hopefully no one else gets hurt, because that glass it's big, it's heavy. Like I said, in the '98 tornado, it was scattered all over downtown Nashville, and I can imagine the mess that this has left. Those pieces of glass are huge, and it takes an awful lot of force because they're made to withstand a lot of force for them to break like that.
And that brings up a great point. We had a wind advisory earlier this week, and we've got incredibly cold temperatures. Davis Nolan is here with us. Davis, as these first responders are out there, they're working, what complications are they going to face in the next coming days?
Well, I'll tell you what, the next several days, things are going to improve, but it's never got out of the mid-20s for highs today, and the wind was blowing 10 to 15 miles an hour, wind chills in the teens, and right now we're 22 degrees in Nashville. By the way, the weather, people are affected by the AT&T outage as well. Clarksville and the Smyrna-Murfreesboro temperature are out due to that, but we are already 18 in McMinnville. That's like actual current temperature. 14 Cookeville, got a little more snowpack on the ground over that way. Winds are dying down. That's the best news I can tell you, though. Down to 0 in the Murfreesboro-Shelbyville area, as you can see, 5 miles an hour in Nashville, but that still has our wind chill factors, or feels like temperatures in the teens. Feels like 3 up in Jamestown.